Will to Power, Part 3. I think that Nietzsche's disguised will to power as enrollment through love applies to both sexes, even though the bias in the time in which he wrote contributed greatly to this outburst in section 777. This is what he writes. Look into it. Women's love and sympathy. Is there anything more egoistic? And if they sacrifice themselves, their honor, their reputation, to whom do they sacrifice themselves? To the man? Or is it not rather to an unbridled urge? These desires are just as selfish, even if they please others and implant gratitude. To what extent this sort of hyperfetation of one valuation can sanctify everything else? A third disguising, I should say, of the will to power, the expression to duty and conscience, by which a person attains a level of superiority over those who are really in power. With this type of disguise, a person or group creates and abide by a set of values to which they also hold those in power accountable, a sort of revaluation, if you will, of values. History contains many such inversions of the master-slave relationship, in which the master eventually becomes enslaved to the set of values of the slave of the oppressed. Nietzsche, as an example, uses the Jews during the occupation of Palestine by the Romans to drive home his point about this type of disguised will to power. The Jews, being the slaves, the oppressed, inverted the noble virtues of the Romans, that of fortitude, courage, and strength of character, by making their own condition of oppression, of enslavement, virtuous, and an evil out of, and making an evil out of the virtue of the Romans. They got control of the Romans through guilt, shame, and cowardice. In other words, even though the Jews appeared to be subjugated, they really became the masters. The same can be said of the early Christians, African slaves in the American colonies and in the American states, and many other oppressed and enslaved persons and groups. This disguised form of the will to power can be interpreted as a way of mastering oneself, in that it forces oneself to adopt a new system of values, thereby forcing one's will to power, not only on others, but most importantly on oneself, by achieving authority and by achieving mastery over one's passions, tendencies, and urges, whether physical, emotional, spiritual, and or intellectual. And the final disguised form of the will to power is the act of praising others. When I praise you for some apparent achievement or prowess, I appear to acknowledge your superiority, but what I'm really doing is affirming my own power of possessing the ability and qualification to correctly assess your achievement. Consider what Nietzsche says in section 775. Praise and gratitude as will to power. Praise and gratitude on the occasions of harvest, good weather, victory, marriage, peace, all these festivals require a subject upon which the feeling can be discharged. One desires that all good things that happen to one should have been done to one. One desires a doer. The same applies to works of art. One is not satisfied with them alone. One praises the doer. What then is praise? A sort of restoration of balance in respect of benefits received, a giving in return, a demonstration of our power for those who praise, affirm, judge, evaluate, pass sentence. They claim the right of being able to affirm, of being able to dispense honors. A heightened feeling of happiness in life is also a heightened feeling of power. It is from this that man praises. From this that he invents and seeks a doer, a subject. Gratitude as virtuous revenge, most strenuously demanded and practiced, where equality and pride must both be upheld, where revenge is practiced best. And finally, Nietzsche's will to power is a life-affirming idea in which we humans, as creative, intelligent creatures, affirm our instincts to acquire power and dominance, in which personal suffering is not evil but a necessary and noble part of existing, in which lasting pleasure, satisfaction, and happiness is the result of the free but controlled expression of the will to power.